Yeah, I think I will go ahead and get started. 10 minutes of my hour is already taken up. Welcome to the wonderful world of Sierra Pacific Industries. My name, for those of anybody ever been at one of my presentations last year? Yeah. Did you get blocks or sunglasses or anything that's kind of good? Not my pad. Better talk to your boss on that one. Most importantly, as a consultant, that's what I do for the company is consult. I'm paid to tell you this is the finest engineered product in the industry, bar none. However, not always, especially in some of your designs, can my product meet those demands. But again, as a consultant, I'll try to lead you down that path if we can, but welcome to our wonderful world. Most notably, thanks for Danny. I know he gets an extra Christmas bonus that some of you don't see because he sets these up and organizes it. I think he gets a spit from Chick-fil-A ordering. But I will tell you, you got to have good, solid distribution. Like I said, this is the finest engineered product in the industry, bar none. However, if you put it in wrong or you don't maintain it, it can fail miserably just like anybody else's. And with that said, a couple people I'd like to have maybe stand up. Obviously, Billy Merritt, some of you know from Merritt Windows and Doors, and then Steve Fleming's the new rep for them, not new in the industry, but new to the Merritt family. And again, these are two people that, if you're working with a project with them, before you leave, maybe give them your card or get their business card. Well, I guess I should say Steve has Billy got a business card yet. Oh, good. This is our backyard. For those of you that don't remember, I'm going to give you a quick 10-minute overview about Sierra Pacific Industries. Then we'll get into the continuing ed and look at different finishes and how to apply them on extrusions. This is our backyard in Northern Virginia. We're located in Red Bluff, California. Been in business 70 years. 70 years ago, Red Emerson, who's still actively involved as the CEO of our company at 90 years old, and his dad bought 300 acres at a sawmill, and it has evolved into a very large lumber company. We're the largest vertically integrated window and door company in North America. This is where that picture was taken.
Where is that?
From my front porch. Where's what?
Where is it?
That's my backyard. You mean that picture right there,
Yeah.
Northern California? That's the Sacramento River. Ironically enough, if you've heard anything about the fires the last 18 months in California, and as a lumber company, you try to do your own controlled burns. Most of the fires in California have been in residential areas, but we were affected. We lost about 40,000 acres. The fire people and the safety people said a lot of times they'd come up to a parcel of land where the fire is fueled and burning, very fluid, and come to an area and it would stop burning. The reason is it would get into some controlled, sustainable forest. When we do our own controlled burns, you try to get the fuel creating brush off the floor of the fire. But you wouldn't have seen that picture from that house when it jumped the Sacramento River. I mean, you're talking about a fire jumping 100 yards and burning. So, but Sierra Pacific Industries overall is the second largest lumber company in North America. We did about 140 billion board feet of finished product last year. We're the largest finger joiner. Like I probably mentioned before, if you own a home in North America, 75% of the interior door jambs are manufactured by us. And then I jokingly like to say thanks for buying our junk lumber, because normally it's finger joints and interior door jambs. A little bit over 2 million acres of forest, 15 sawmills, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier, a sustainable initiative where we do take very seriously how we are working and managing our forests, whether it's waterways, whether it's livestock, or whether it's how we're going to still be building wood windows in 100 years. We actually plant about 8 million trees a year. For every one we cut, we plant 7 to 8 trees in our sustainable initiative. Now, with that said, ironically enough, Red Emerson, our CEO, as I mentioned earlier, 90 years old, when Red and his dad, 70 years ago, bought a parcel of land, 300 acres and a sawmill, the first thing they did was scalp it. You clear cut 70 years ago. Nobody thought about sustainable initiatives and taking the little ones out and letting the big ones grow. So again, we've been in the window business. How do you, on the 10 western states, how do you become a national company? We acquired Heard Windows. I don't know whether anybody's H-E-A-R-D of H-U-R-D. They were a very reputable wood-clad window company owned by holding companies in the central part of Wisconsin. With Heard came Super Seal in 2014. And then, which takes us to 3-window plant now, and then we acquired Westview. I was in here, I believe, last spring to do curtain wall. We're still the only load-bearing curtain wall system in North America. There's a sample back here. Does my pointer work? Well, over on that silver round table, you'll see our load-bearing curtain wall system, very similar to the movement today in the CLT type configuration. If you've never been to a sawmill, they are a fascinating plant. What happens at a sawmill, and this is a small log in one of our 15 sawmills, but what happens is this might be a 90 or an 80-foot tree. We're going to obviously take the branches off. Those are going to be some imperfections if you're trying to make a furniture-grade product. But at the same time that 90-foot tree is running through on this conveyor belt, and that's a small log, it's less than 2 foot in diameter. And what's happening is that chain is driving it forward, but also rotating it so you debark it. And then it's being cut by a laser computer that's going to decide where the imperfections are, where the armpit from the branch was, where any imperfections or knots or anything like that you're going to stick into the junk pile or probably go into a finger joint with silicon. Now, so we're obviously a lumber company first. We build window and door parts, and renewable energy is kind of an interesting topic for a window guy to talk about. But if you can imagine how much sawdust and bark, 15 sawmills, 2 mill plants, and all of the board feet that we're going through, let's say 130 billion board feet, it creates a lot of sawdust, a lot of bark. Well, what happens is, historically speaking, in the lumber company business, whether it's Georgia Pacific or Warehouse or Sierra Pacific, and I'm not knocking any of them, they're good competitors of ours. One of them does a lot more board feet than we do. But what do you do with all that sawdust? Historically speaking, you gave it to local farmers for livestock bedding, or you threw it away. Well, we created 7 cogeneration plants. That's sure one of the 7 on the left-hand corner. Where the hopper is on the far right, we put sawdust and bark in there, run it through into steam, and create enough electricity to run 15 sawmills, 3 window plants, and enough electricity to sell back to the state of California for 35,000 homes. So our sustainable initiative doesn't stop in our forests. But some of the differences between us and everybody else, because you can get windows that go up and down at a double hung or a single hung or a casement, or lifted slide patio doors or sliding patio doors. Big difference. We're the only ones that offer a 20-year warranty against wood rot with 9 species of wood. It's called CoreGuard Plus. It's patented with us. And that was one of the influences why we acquired Heard in central Wisconsin. Number 1, because of location. Number 2, because their chemists had come up with a very unique system in treating lumber. Some of you remember the theory. You're going to remember about 15% of what I say. So my theory, public speaking, is if I say it, and then I show it, and then let you touch it and see it, Good group like this, percentages will go up on the retention from 15 to maybe 16 and a half, 17, something like that. It's all win for all. But you'll see those 9 species. A couple things I'd like to point out about those 9 species. The only tree in 2.2 million acres that we're growing is pine and fir. Same price from us. Those other species we're going to get from another mill. We don't grow red oak and white oak. In fact, I'm doing a nice job up on Potomac River. And one of the rooms, the den, they wanted black walnut. Well, what we do is seek out somebody that's growing black walnut, have them cut their pieces, bring it into our mill. We make it tolerant to fit our cladding, and everybody stays happy. We do treat even other species like black walnut so that we can offer and back up our 20-year warranty against wood rot or insect infestation. It's great for historic renovation for us. We usually are one of the leaders on that, where a historic society wants wood windows only, who you're going to look for. Now, this is one of the other differences. We're the only load-bearing curtain wall company in North America. This is my home in Richmond, Virginia, before I was a consultant. See, you should have laughed at that. You know that a window guy doesn't live in this home, but a couple things I like to point out here. This client used our curtain wall system. So this is probably a very large piece of glass with SPL on it, probably solar band 60, solar band 70. But they didn't need to use this load-bearing system because this beam right here and that 12 by 12 are probably carrying the load, not the windows. But then when I look at this project, again, as a consultant, I look at it and think, wow, they use twin casements here, whether they're vinyl or whether they're wood. You can tell by the mold. But if you look to the inside of that house, this is the view that they were looking at. Now, the first thing a consultant would tell you, the design team or your client, is, you know, for $30 more, you could have a French casement. And your windows would open up and the astragal would move with it. Now, a client that has a window budget like this, they got $1 million view. But if they would, they probably would have appreciated not having that astragal there. Secondly, if I owned this home, really, I would talk to Red Emerson and have him cut a couple of these trees down to open up my view a little bit. So again, see, consultants can be valuable, even for the lumber company that he works with. But obviously with curtain wall systems, mostly what we've done is churches or residential. Here's a great example. Our curtain wall in load bearing at a 3-inch width would have taken all these big wide moles you see here in that black walnut job. Would have worked nicer. Clean, narrow sight lines, better view. Doesn't look bad, it just looks busy. And then obviously in colors and clad selections, you can get, and that's the advantage of any extruded aluminum, a split row. We offer 75, 58 are the same price. As we'll talk today in liquid versus powder coat paint, some advantages to color with powder is you can do textured finishes. I got a few samples of those. This is Julian's home. Julian chose red. Hopefully Julian doesn't think I'm insulting him and hates that kind of architecture.
Oh no, it's beautiful.
Julian, I've had that happen where somebody said I would have never designed that house. However, 75 colors, including anodized. We are the only ones on the globe that bring in the extrusion as bare aluminum. And there's 8 major extruders in the U.S. that work with us, or Marvin, or tell us much because they're roll form. Colby, Eagle, and they're all good competitors. I'm not knocking anybody's product. But you go to that extruder and you say, here's the thickness we want. And here's the glass rabbit edge we want. We want this traditional look, or maybe one a chamfered look like a pipe. So you have it 24-foot lengths. We're the only ones that bring it in as bare aluminum, and we cut before we paint. And the advantage to that versus all of our competitors, whether they're using liquid or whether they're using powder, is any of our miter joints or end work doesn't have shiny aluminum on it. When we got in the curtain wall business in 2016 and acquired Westview, which is now called Architectural Wall, that was the first thing applicators said. Billy's guys over at Merritt said that. And that is, they don't have to go back through where you have butt joints on curtain wall applications and large pieces of glass and take a black magic marker to cover up the shiny aluminum. Because again, we're going to pre-cut it for whatever window you're building and then paint it. Sure, this might, and again, some of you, yeah, this is Marty's house. Yeah, Marty. Marty, are you in here? Is Marty here? I can go get him. No, because then he'll think I'm weird for being in his backyard woods, taking a picture of his house. Actually, this isn't Marty's home. But I've been working with Marty on one of the Walter Reed projects, and I thought I'd throw it in here. But this is another case where you're sitting down as the design team, and you got a client that's building a 10,000 square foot home. This is probably a $200,000 or $300,000 window package. This is one that Billy and Steve rule about. I'm just a consultant, remember? I don't get paid for that. But I will tell you what I tell you as the design team or suggest to you and your client. And that is something like, you ever seen a Rain-X on your windshield? Well, Cardinal Glass Company has what they call a neat glass, where 3% more, that client could have neat glass. And they wouldn't have to worry about when a rain hits that facade and the spots and the drips and the dirt. Again, those are things that a window consultant might think of if you get us involved that you might not think of. Or then your client's sitting there paying somebody $500 and $600 a month to clean your glass. But again, when you start out as a residential window company and then make a good product, you get involved with commercial. Well, I think this is Sarah's house. Yeah. Oh, Sarah chose, now if you look at her house and her design, nothing really.
I actually got of all of them.
Sarah would never live in Northern Virginia.
Sarah, should I pick somebody else or another picture?
No,
Well, I'll tell you what, if you look at this house, very plain. But if you start looking at what she did in the back, where she had lifts and slides, and she opened up an area to her visible pool. It got a lot better. When you go around the curve in front of her house, you don't think pizzazz until you get in the back. That's what happens with a lot of window guys' projects. The front facade isn't as glamorous as the back. But we obviously do a lot of commercial, whether it's historic courthouses. This is in Baltimore, called the Old Cotton Mill. If you're driving up 95 and head up north on 83, look to the east, there's $1.5 million worth of our product approved by the Historic Society. Some of you are shaking your heads. That has a special canning system, custom trims and sill nose. Or a little bit closer to home, we do quite a bit of business with Bizzuto. Bizzuto uses our vinyl windows. And I'll pass around the warmth and beauty of plastic. It's on tape. I have to be recorded saying that as a lumber guy. But I will tell you, can you imagine in 2014 when Red Emerson went to buy Herd and they said, hey, by the way, Red, you got to buy this vinyl plant. He wanted to know where the plastic trees were. I mean, there's a guy that bleeds sawdust. But our real niche, besides a good quality product, which I hope to be working with you on some projects, is we're a little bit thicker as far as the extrusion, and our niche is colors. That's what Bizzuto uses with us. Bizzuto can buy Slide Gem and MI Direct. those single hung white window, then there's other people that are going to be considerably less. If they're looking for a black or an anodized or a bronze, then obviously we could be a better choice. Our niche has been painted. And with that said, this is continuing edge. Go ahead.
So you paint any color on the vinyl?
Standard 15, but our problem is when you offer 78 or 72 colors, if you have a client that picks a blue and says they want a value, you ever hear a value engineer? Never. I know you didn't. Spend a year and a half with a client, and what do? They get with a contractor, and they tell them how stupid your design is and how dumb the product choice is, and they can save them a whole lot of money. That's your world and my world. However, in this particular case, vinyl isn't inexpensive painted, but it really is a nice system. When we talk about aluminum extrusions and paints today, it's the equivalent to an AAMA 2605 or a commercial grade finish on vinyl. So again, we'll look at powder coat versus liquid paint. Anybody ever heard of Kynar?
Sure.
AAMA 26.
Uh-oh.
I'm trying to build a relationship in here. We're building blocks for the future. Well, we're going to look at different colors, different options. Obviously, anybody in here not taking a bucket of paint and painted something? Raise your hand. You've never painted something?
No, I'm telling him.
Oh.
You have not.
Anybody? Oh, good. Wait a minute. Come on. Let's get serious. Did anybody never paint in their life? There could be big buckets in there. Well, good. Everybody knows a liquid paint. Everybody's going to Lowe's or Home Depot. Had somebody turn around and you give them a card and they squirt down. Just think the guy that invented, the person that invented that machine is probably living on an island somewhere. But we'll look at history, how it's evolved. Started in Europe. Why? Because they're more environmentally conscious than we are as U.S. citizens. We'll look at the different applications, understand the coatings and some of the testing from AAMA. But again, if you look at powder, powder is a paint in a powder form. You got to figure out a way to get powder, get liquefied, so that it can go on a substrate. In this case, the substrate to me as a window guy is a stile or a rail on a window or a door. Anybody know what PVDF acronym stands for?
Jesus.
Okay, I'll get the wallet back out if it'll entice you.
Polyvinyl.
Polyvinyl, somebody said.
Vinyl.
Diafluoride.
Anybody disagree with it? Finish isn't good. But again, I'm here trying to build some relationships.
Yeah, gold plastic. That's what we need.
There it is. Not finished.
Oh, all right.
PVDF in powder is what holds the pigment in, so you get richer, darker color. The same ingredient and the same acronym for Kynar 70. Kynar 70 is actually a Valspar trademark name. I never sold for a company that did extrusions that were painted by Valspar, but if you, the professional, designed something that said an AAMA 2605 Kynar finish, I sold you product all day long. It met the specs. They're kind of like the Kleenex of the tissue business. But that's the same acronym that you use in powder. So how's it applied? You got resins, obviously, then you're going to have some pigment, and then you got to have something binding or cross-linking and hardening that finish. Because why? Again, in your specifications for the last 20 years, professionals like yourselves historically put powder coat specifications on two things: hand railing and door jambs. Anybody think why that is? It's less likely to scratch. It's less likely to chip. It's a harder, more durable finish than, say, for instance, the Kynar 70, which is a very soft finish. But you've got all these things that go in to trying to make that picture on the far right-hand side a powder material. Now, I'll start passing around some of this. This is on the quiz too. This shows you what it comes like. And then, like I said, it started in Europe. Why? They're more environmentally safe. But here in the 40s and 50s in Europe is how they originated powder coat. If you can imagine, think of the applicator standing there in my world with a 24-foot piece of extrusion for a door or a bottom rail that's 12 inches. And they're going to turn around and they're going to put a blowtorch or a propane torch, live fire on it, and they're going to melt the powder to where it coagulates on the heated substrate and forms a paint bond. Wouldn't you hate to be the person that used to have to run that machine? Got an open flame. You're talking about danger. You know, it's compressed air. Now, in today's world, and they still use this today, by the late 50s, early 60s, what happened was somebody said, gosh, I don't want to start that fire anymore and try to heat up a substrate and then try to coagulate and jellify and mold powder onto a substrate. So they came up with this, and this is called a fluoridized bed. They still use this, but imagine this is as big as a silo. These things are 50 foot wide. So what happens is now you heat your substrate, you heat something like your window part or electrical cords, anything like that that they've used powder for over the years to rubberize it. And it'll go down, and what happens is there's hot air in there. No, it's not a window salesman standing on the bottom. There's hot air blowing up. They put the powder in, and it forms like a jelly or a taffy. And it's swirling around in there. It's all heated up, and then you take this piece of metal, and you're going to dip it down into that vat and pull it back out and let it dry. Now, if you look at what it says up there, 6 to 20 mils thick. Think of this. I don't have a window part very close, but look at this. Any extrusion, well, I should use this, where you saw this extrusion, or, you know, and like I said, this is a glass edge. If you paint an extrusion, especially in brick mold casings and trims and bull noses, if you paint those thicker than 4 mils thick, you'll lose your sharp edge. You'll lose those cut sight lines. So again, when you're looking at 60 to 20 mils thick, has nothing to do with the window business. They're not dipping window parts in there. They were probably still blowtorching it and trying to heat it down. But again, if you look at some of the uses, we all know a refrigerator rack. A refrigerator rack that feels rubberized, that's actually what they do is they heat that refrigerator rack and set it down into that swirling jelly taffy, pull it back out, and it's been powder coated. That's a paint material, very hard finish. Everybody knows that. What a refrigerator. Those of you that don't own a refrigerator. Then obviously, oh, this is a favorite of mine. By the 60s, they got a little bit smarter, and somebody came up with an electrostatically, a positive-negative flow to this application. By the 70s, it comes to the U.S. and Japan, and you see there riding mowers still do that, windows more and more today. Truck beds not as much. If you bought a new car in the last 20 years, you realize 50% to 60% is plastic. Mold. It's not painted beds or cars anymore. But obviously, we're going to learn about increasing the transfer, reducing the waste, more environmentally safe. You know, in your specifications, they say Kynar 70 or equivalent. Also happens to say low VOC. If you could take one thing out of here today, besides a good meal, a little entertainment, maybe a few blocks for your building, exercises at your desk, we'll talk about VOC. But obviously, what's going to happen in a powder? They're going to take that block that I passed around. Did everybody see it? Does the peanut gallery get to see these things? Oh, okay, good. If you, oh, this side might not. The other side. Let me pass these around. And back here, you're going to have to get up and pass it around. But that'll show you how the block, you know what's going to happen is they're going to have extruders, they got to cool it. This machine, and the whole goal is to get a 50-pound box of color in a powder application. Micronized and sieve are two very important adjectives to the success. But what happens is they're going to put this in, all the ingredients in to make a powder coat finish, and they're going to grind it up, and then they're going to turn around and they roll it or chill it, and you'll see those in a minute. And then it comes down here and it goes into a bin of flakes. I'm sitting here thinking I didn't want to say window salespeople, but so again, what happens is I'll pass these around on this side, and I'll pass these around on this side, so that everybody gets better retention to this presentation. But you'll see some of these flakes and things, and what happens is, if it goes through that process, now it goes into a big coffee grinder. And it's going to grind it up, it's going to roll it down here, it's going to chill it, and if it comes out as powder, then we win. Where it has chunks or lumps or whole pieces, it's going to run it right back through the whole system and grind it out, because again, it has to get to what I'll pass around now, which is a true powder finish. Got it, there's a great color. Now, think of this. Have you ever had a client, even in a curtain wall application, not one anodized or bronze or black? They want a custom color. So think about that in liquid, because in liquid, you have to have a 54-gallon drum minimum. If Billy Merritt orders a custom color because his builder wanted a custom color and it's 40 windows and that 54-gallon drum would paint 600 windows, the paint manufacturer doesn't care. The client pays for the full 54-gallon drum of liquid paint. In a box like this, think of a couple things. It's a lot less than a 54-gallon drum of liquid paint. Think of our plant in Wisconsin where it's about 18 below right now, natural temperature. Liquid paint facilities and extruders have to have heated areas to keep that liquid paint. And the big difference between liquid and powder is liquid paint has to have chrome on the substrate as a primer to make Kynar 70 or any AAMA 603 or 4 liquid finish firm to that extrusion. Powder doesn't use chrome. Powder has no VOC. Powder has 100% fill, 70% for Kynar, 100% for powder. Now, how do they create it? If you take that box, that 50-pound box of blue or green or whatever color it might be, you're going to blow it through an applicator. Let that shine up. And then you've got to have something negative So the facilities that have powder coat facilities have a positive gun, and they have a negative charge on a conveyor belt. So you see right through here. Now, again, extrusions are going to go through, they got to get washed. Then they got to get heated, because you try to burn off any imperfections that might cause through the washing. And then they turn around and go into that paint booth. Have you ever been into a liquid paint booth? Whatever color they're painting is the color that the booth is on the outside, right? The powder, you don't know. And I'll explain why. But again, these are all computerized. You still see the toolboxes get powder coated. Again, not a lot of the automobile industry. And what happens in this computer, it's all computer generated. Our computer can go through, and if we're painting a 24-foot wide header for a sliding or a folding patio door, and the next run's coming in with 10-inch samples like you see on the table, that computer knows when to poof and how much poof and powder to shoot out. Everything else flakes down into the bottom, gets swept up, 93% yield. So you've got positive gun, and you've got a negative charge or your extrusion running around the facility. It even shows you the guy doesn't have to use hazmat suits like you do in a liquid facility. But it's got to go through, and these are the two different substrates that are indigenous to the window world. This shows your roll form. Some manufacturers still use roll formed aluminum, like a gutter. I don't think you can cut yourself with those. Secondly, this shows you somebody's wood window using roll formed aluminum. By the way, AAMA no longer recognizes roll formed aluminum in any of their testing. And then this shows you an extrusion. So those are what the materials that window and door companies use as their substrates. This is seen up there. Now, what happens is you got a 24-foot piece of this extrusion. In this case, this is probably a door. This is probably a door rail. Well, what happens is this is 24 foot long. It goes into a powder coat area. It's on a conveyor belt that has a positive charge or a negative charge. The gun has the positive. So you see the substrate up there. So what happens is it goes through, the powder gets poofed on there, the electric charge is electrostatically applied. Every bit of powder that can go on that piece adheres to it. Now look at this. When it gets out the other end of the powder booth, this substrate of a door or window stile and rail has a 2 mil thick coating of paint on it. So I hate charts, don't shoot the messenger. All that says, this is on the quiz too, 93% yield in powder. There's about 7% waste. We're really vacuuming her up in the bottom, but you don't get it all out. Now, so it's going to go through on this rack. It still has to be cured or heated, just like you would in a liquid paint booth. You got to cure the molecules and the paint pigment onto that extrusion. But what happens in a powder facility is what's called thermal soak. It forms a bond, less likely to be affected by UV, less likely to be affected by scratching. Now, on the other hand, let's take liquid. And we all decided earlier you have painted before. So, instead of a 54-gallon drum, let's just take the gallon drum you got at Lowe's. So about a little bit less than half are your solvents. And then the person, when they, at Lowe's, puts pigments in, and then they shake it up, and now you've actually, with your solvents, created a paint color in liquid. Now, that same 24-foot piece of extrusion going through the paint line in a liquid paint plant is going to come through 2 mils. Anybody know what WTF stands for?
TF?
Yeah, there's another acronym running around too, isn't it? Yes, wet film. Gosh, there's even a cheat sheet up here. Usually I get my wallet as it. But yeah, wet film thickness, 2 mil thick, just like powder. Now what happens is the same piece of extrusion, just like in a powder facility, has to go through an oven, has to get cooked or baked on. 350-degree temperature. What happens now is you get your off-gassing. That's the big difference. Anybody ever see the movie? Gosh, most of you weren't born. 1983, Aaron Brockovich sued the state of California and California Electric. Why? Because chrome from the paint lines were getting into the water and poisoning and killing people. We're not rocket scientists, we're window and door people. Of course, we like to consider ourselves furniture builders. Sorry about that. However, when Red Emerson decided, gosh, I don't like shiny corners on the windows that I have at home. And they said, well, Red, if you got to paint, you have to have powder in California. That's why we were the first to ever do it. Those 8 extruders eventually will all be forced to go to powder coat. Environmentally safe, it's liquid versus liquid with all the toxic waste. Here's a chart that I don't mind looking at. If you look at that, liquid paint, you don't want to be in the yes series. You want to be in the no series. Look, hazardous waste. And then again, think of the paint manufacturers that have to keep 54-gallon drums in a heated area. You know, even at 18 below zero, if we're done with that box of paint today, we could stick that outside in the snow in central Wisconsin and not affect that film or that pigment at all. I did tell you I hate charts though, but that's a pretty emphatic one. So again, if you look at thermal set versus liquid paint, you got Kynar 70. And again, I run into Kynar 70 as an AAMA 2605 spec. Why? Because that's a commercial finish. It has 70% so that it holds its pigment. You know, think of this. 40 years ago in the window business, white windows, gosh, probably 20 years ago, white windows, Steve can attest to this. White windows were 65% of our business. Today it's a reversal. We're doing about 30% white. We do a lot more colors. A lot of black like you see in these samples. Blues, reds. Guys, you saw Danny Jim. He used red. Try to talk him out of that color. Thermal plastics, however, in a liquid paint booth using chrome and causing VOC and Aaron Brockovich to be a billionaire. I probably shouldn't have said that because people died from that atrocity. Thermal plastic is a soft film. That's why liquid paints meet at 2605 when it's a Kynar 70, because that PVDF binding agent holds the colors in better. Quite frankly, the 3 ratings from AAMA, 2603, 2604, and 2605, and you'll see in this presentation, 2603 and 2604 are a harder finish in a liquid paint than the Kynar 70 material. Again, you're trying to keep the pigment in, is why it's got 70 versus the thermal set system with powder, which is a 100% PVDF. Those are the AAMA different categories for testing products. Now, I won't kid you. 9 out of 10 times, I don't think that's the impact. No. I don't know where that building is.
Right.
Is it Chrysler?
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't the Empire State Building after I said it. However, I dare say these are probably not going to use painted windows. Normally they're using aluminum. They're using a mill finish. Or steel, maybe. Yeah. Anything like that. Unless it's the penthouse, they might use a Sierra Pacific clad window. But good chemical resistance, superior mechanics. And again, look at colors. You know, another advantage to powder, as I mentioned earlier, textured finishes. I will tell you, if you take a look at the textured finishes, they're really cool. I'm doing some old warehouses where they're making them into condos down in Richmond. And the first thing they said was, it looks like the old steel window, let's use it. And the first thing Mark Pendleton, their consultant here, said was, I want you to stop and think about Holland. Because for 5 or 6 weeks, your windows will be green. And I always tell somebody that because those samples have never been exposed to the elements outside, never should have ever felt pollen. And I have to wash those textured samples with a rag, a wet rag, about once a month. Dust can collect to it. Again, textured finishes are different than a smooth finish. We're also looking at, and they're doing over in Europe, swirls. And you'll see from our products, we do a lot of multicolored, where it has black flakes in it, and it gives you a two-tone effect. Now we're looking at doing wood grain, where you can actually take with a powder and do a wood grain that looks like a mahogany including knots. Pretty cool. I just saw a European window in vinyl down in Hilton not too long ago. It looked like a mahogany window to me. So we went in.
The roller, finishes and the production style. What are the differences in the trade on it?
Well, that's a great question. Liquid finishes are warranted to 20 years. Powder coats can go. Yeah. The ours is a 30 year.
30?
Yeah. Less affected by UV, less affected by fade. I got a couple of fade slides in here. I might even have some more of y'all's home. Oh yeah, this is somebody's home, I remember. There's Sarah's home.
Have another house?
Yeah.
I like white.
She does like white, she does like black, she does like pocketing doors. This is a custom color. When I say we do 75, actually we do 76. This is Georgetown Square. Merrick did this project with, I think, Gilbane, wasn't it? And that was, yeah. That was a custom color. We even did a custom color on the inside finish. But any custom color, some of the advantages enclosed, and again, no special requirements, no housing requirements, 100% solid, no VOCs. Have I mentioned that yet? And then again, the health safety parts of it. You know, it's really ironic. We bought Hurd in 2014, and Hurd, their extruder, actually did two things. If you bought a Hurd residential finish, it was a powder coat. If Hurd, prior to us acquiring them, had to meet an AAMA 2605 or commercial grade spec, that extruder in Wisconsin did that in liquid. They mix. And again, the fade ratio difference, scratching, it's easier to clean up. It cost us as a manufacturer $2 million to put a paint line in Wisconsin when we acquired Hurd. But we just feel it's better for the environment, better for the product, it's better for your client. And again, oversprays. Think of this. If Mark Pendleton makes a mistake and calls the plant and says, hey, you know that red job I sold? I made a mistake and I missed a window. No, I wouldn't say that. Billy Merritt missed a window. I would never. But let's say he missed the window or Mark Pendleton missed the window. Now, in a powder booth, they could shut that window line down if they're painting black windows. And in 10 minutes, and all they're doing is blowing out the nozzle, poofing the painted powder out of that nozzle. And then they're going to turn around and paint my red window. 10 minutes, it shuts that plant down to do that changeover. In a liquid facility, it's a 4-hour process because they got to get mineral spirits in. They got to blow out those hoses to clear out from the black windows that they're painting to the red window that Mark Pendleton did. So again, efficiencies of your facility is obviously a big draw, a big one out. And it's environmentally safe. So again, if you look at some of the applications, residential, commercial, handrails I mentioned, door jambs. Why? You don't want them scratching, less likely to scratch. But these are the three different test levels for AAMA.
2603, historically, even in a liquid finish, is harder. But obviously, you want to get something that's a better for your client. I will pass this around. This is one of those things that ends up in your briefcase when you go to the testing facility and you have no idea how. I did not steal this from AAMA. I got back to Richmond after being in the AAMA facility several years ago, and this was in my briefcase. I'm sure it was one of my associates trying to steal it for themselves, have me get busted if somebody found it, and they forgot to grab it. So I've kept this. But this will show you, when you look at dry hardness, what they're going to do is they're going to turn around in a facility, whether it's us or Marvin or Colby or Eagle or whoever it might be, Weather Shield, Gelatin, I don't care. If you want to meet AAMA or Hallmark, what they're going to do is they're going to take your piece of aluminum in there and they're going to put a barrel pencil on it and they're going to scratch it up. They roll this pencil all over it. Then, if your film fails, liquid or powder, check, you fail. That's the dry part. Now, then they're going to do the same thing and put tape on it and try to peel your finish off your substrate. And if it doesn't fail, whether it's liquid or powder, then it obviously gets another check. Impact resistance, you'll see, is about a 3 millimeter ping. And they'll put that on there, they'll put tape on it, and if that doesn't peel your finish, then you check that out. Or abrasive, and you'll see where they literally take a wire brush. And if your finish fails, there's my hour, friend. If your finish fails, then you would fail. Or chemical resistance. And then lastly, I like to show this. 2 different facilities test for AAMA. One's in Florida, one's in Arizona. Obviously, Florida for reasons of salt spray and some, obviously, in Arizona with the effects of the UV. But what happens is, if you're trying to meet a residential 2603, whether it's liquid or powder, you put your piece of aluminum up there after it's all done the other things that I passed around with that test lab sample. And after a year, if you still haven't failed, or the delta eyes don't detect any fading, then they turn around and move on. If you meet a 2603 or 2604, it's 5 years. 2605, they put that piece of aluminum, whether it's powder or whether it's liquid painted, on that same test lab 10 years. Again, I hate charts, but you like the word excellent. This, in closing, is a good example. The architect wasn't to blame here. The architect specified this powder coat extruded door system and windows. But that genius contractor that we've all worked with turns around and says, hey, look, I could save you a lot of money. I got a window just as good as what Torty Gallus said. You ever heard that? No.
You never have? You're not listening then, because it happens every day. So what happens is, the contractor puts this roll-formed aluminum liquid painted window from Iowa. I'm not mentioning any names. They're a good, reputable company, but they use liquid paint on roll-formed aluminum. Now, this was a 7-year difference and an $88,000 lawsuit to buy new windows. All the contractor had to do was put the same window in. If he would have put this window door system in, there would have never been a lawsuit because they faded the same ratio. I was called out in South Carolina as a consultant, and they said, hey, Pendo, you got to go out and look at this house because they're fading windows. And I thought, what color? And they said, bronze. And I thought, oh, wow. We walked up to that home in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm not kidding you, the bronze windows, to me, looked new. We walked around the house to the 2,000 square foot addition they put on that house, and they bought the same window manufacturer in the same color,
and it was a difference of that. To the naked eye, I didn't see any fade in that original house that was 7 years old. But side by side with the new product, there was a difference. Here's one of my favorites. Two things happened here. It was a poor design. Because why they didn't use black windows, I don't know. Or white windows and black doors. But I'll guarantee you, there's a case where the contractor said to that homeowner, hey, you know that 3.0 panel door, that swing door? I've got a deal for you in white, and it will be accented by your facade. Trying to take the design out of it. Look over here. I'm not kidding you. I'll bet you $100 if I had it. I'll bet you $100 that was a builder mistake on a previous job that he used in that project and convinced that client how that would accent that color. Again, I've talked enough. Any questions? Did everybody sign in? Did everybody get Billy or Steve's card? Because these guys at Merit will take care of you. You know, it's funny, I don't get complaints. You know why? Because we have distributors that put windows in. I'll guarantee you, whether it's us or Pella or Marvin or Anderson or Colby or Eagle or any of them, if we say that we meet a PG 50 or a PG 65 for AAMA or Hallmark, believe me, they had to go through the same test and the same gateway size I did. So why do windows fail? Normally it's installed, and these guys are fit. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you.
Make sure you signed in.